just really the event of Easter, and the event that we celebrate, and all that happened, and that it's this event, and we believe it happened or it didn't happen. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And in everything, if it did happen, everything follows that in terms of what we can do with Christ and what Christ can do through us. And the message today, I call it, "Whose burden are you carrying?" In John 14:1, "Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me." Pretty simple. Pretty simple. It's kind of funny. I do have a rule. I tell people, I say, if someone tells you to trust me, don't. All right? Jesus is different. Jesus says you can trust in me. And he's telling us to trust in God, trust in the Father. It's very simple instructions. See, when we stop loving God, we stop loving each other, life gets more complicated and life gets more burdensome. There's something about if we trust somebody, things become more simple. When we don't trust, things become more complicated. Think about a marriage. Think about your boss. Think about anything you want to think about me. Think about anything you want to think of. If you don't trust, suddenly it becomes more complicated. We don't trust each other, it becomes more complicated. One of the most challenging tasks, and really, folks, it is a task. It is a task when loving God and each other even is trusting. Trusting is a task. There are times when I have to remind myself even to trust God. It doesn't always come naturally. And often it doesn't come naturally. I have to remind myself I trust Jesus. Even in the midst of any storm, something that I've created or somebody else created, I have to trust Jesus. See, God offers simple. God offers simple. We make it complicated. If you don't remember anything else, remember that. God offers simple. We make it complicated. This is the battle, the enemy or ourselves. We give in, I think, we give it this power daily, I think. It started in a garden and it continues to this day. Can I really trust him? Life is simple. Then we did not trust him. Adam and Eve did not trust him. Life got complicated. None of us is immune from this danger. I mean, when was that first day you realized that your teacher wasn't perfect? And how your world came crashing down? Or your mom or your dad was human? Or a pastor or a church leader was human? And your world shifted. Because, can I really trust them? God's not like that, right? God is perfect, and we can trust him. So none of us is immune from this danger. We deal with this every day. And I want to talk about Gideon, because he's a great example of how things can go sideways. Where things can, and we'll talk a little bit about where he was, but how things went sideways for him. Gideon was an Israelite in the early days when the Israelites first settled the Promised Land. I think a lot of you know the story. How many know the story of the fleece? Just so I know my audience here, okay? Most, not all. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about that. God chose to allow the Israelites to be under a siege by the Midianites because they neglected God. And the Israelites called out to God to save them, and God chose Gideon to be the man, to be his vessel. Judges 6:12. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "Mighty hero, the Lord is with you." I think that's pretty cool. Imagine what your response would be if an angel spoke those words to you. "Mighty hero, the Lord is with you." Here's Gideon's response. Sir, Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? He complains. He's cynical. I mean, because it's like, oh yeah, God is with us. It sure does not feel like it. And then Gideon goes further than that. First, he answers with this cynicism, this anger. And he says, but now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites. So Gideon meets God, but God meets Gideon, and Gideon responds with cynicism and anger. I'd like to think that I would do a better job, but I don't know. I wasn't there with the Midianites crushing all our crops every year. The interesting thing is that God goes right past that. He doesn't respond to that. It's like he is aware, that we only see what we want to see. He's aware that Gideon is human like us. We see what we want to see. He just goes right past that. I find that fascinating. God does not try to prove himself to Gideon at this point. I think the response is based on a premise. Either you believe I'm God or you don't. You can be angry with me. I will assume you believe I am Lord, and this is my plan. See, God refuses to clutter the conversation. He refuses to make it complicated. I'm with you. Mighty warrior. Mighty hero. I'm with you. Oh, yeah? And he doesn't go down that road. It'd be like a father trying to convince a child that he is the father. If you're having to do that, you've already lost the conversation. God's response, though, this is God's response to Gideon's cynicism and anger. Then the Lord turned to him and said, go with the strength you have. Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you. So God just keeps pressing forward. But Gideon's not going to have any of this, right? He doesn't want to get involved. But Lord, Gideon replied, how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family. See, Gideon is imprisoned to cynicism, anger, fear. How many of us are in those sort of prisons? Cynicism, anger, fear. God wants to do something. God is standing and talking to him. An angel is standing and talking to him, and he's still holding on to those things. Slowly, God's going to move him out of this prison. And God gives Gideon an opportunity to respond, really, in a smaller way. It's still a bold way, but it's a smaller way. He says, go and destroy these idols that are in your father's courtyard, in your father's house. These are pagan idols. And so Gideon did. At verse 27, he took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord had commanded, but he did it at night because he was afraid of the other members of his father's household and the people of the town. So he was obedient to God, barely. Okay? But he did what God had asked him to do, but he still had his fear. Still enslaved to fear. We do not know how much longer after this happened. And Gideon, the people were angry at Gideon. We're not going to go into that. Just they were angry, but they moved past that. And in verse 27, we see, so Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord had commanded. I'm sorry, I moved on. Verse 34. Sorry, Brian. Then the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with power. He blew a ram's horn as a call to arms, and the men of the clan of Abiezer came to him. So this happened a little while after he had done this with the Asherah poles and the Baal idols, because we still had the Midianite problem. And God's going to deal with the Midianite problem now. And he's still going to use Gideon. And he says, we're told that the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with power. Now I'm thinking, all right, the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with power. Obviously, we can conclude that Gideon's fear is gone. Wrong. Gideon says to God, if you're truly going to use me to rescue Israel as you promised, prove it to me in this way. God, are you sure? Are you sure this is the way? Are you sure you can use me? Are you sure all I need to do is trust you? Is that all I need to do is trust you? And we can really shorten it to his response is, God, I do not trust you. Just plain and simple. I do not trust you. God is patient. And God showed himself in a way that it's interesting that Gideon dictated. Gideon is the one who decided this is what I'm going to do. And God allowed for it. And we call it a fleece. He put a fleece out, a coat, if you will, a sheep's coat. You just put it out, and one day he said, all right, if it is dry in the morning, if it's wet, then you're God, and I'll go. And then the next day, he flipped it. And that's why we call it a fleece. Some people have built a theology around it, that we do these things to check God. Let's just back away from that just a little bit, okay? This is Gideon, a stubborn man, full of fear. So he does this. He does this. God shows that he's there. And so Gideon does what he's asked to do, and he gets 32,000 men, and God says, ask them if they want to go or not. And 12,000 say no, and then he's left with 20,000, and then God says, you know what, that's still too many. Go down to the water. Those that actually keep their head up, get some water and drink like this, keep them. The rest can go home. Well, that left 300 men for Gideon. 300 men. The Bible says, there were so many Midianites they couldn't count them. Grains of sand. That's how many Midianites. And Gideon, at this point, with that fleece, he's like, okay, I know we can do it. However, it's interesting because God knows his servant Gideon, just like he knows us. And God, Gideon might turn to his old master, which is fear. He might return to fear, just like we do. We're pretty fickle. Non-native English speakers, you know what fickle means? We change our minds a lot. And Gideon might turn to his old master of fear. And so God gave Gideon an affirmation, and this is Judges 7:9-11. That night the Lord said, get up, go down to the Midianite camp, for I have given you victory over them. But here it is, if you have your doubts, if you're afraid to attack, if you have your doubts, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. Listen to what the Midianites are saying, and you will be greatly encouraged. Then you'll be eager to attack. Isn't that something? God has Gideon be encouraged by the enemy he's going to destroy. And what he hears is a conversation. I had a dream last night, and we were bowled over. One Midianite saying to another. And the Midianites say, we're going to get destroyed here. All right, so Gideon's happy about this, imagine. God did give victory over the Midianites. You can read how he did that. We're not going to spend a lot of time here with that, because that is not really the focus today. All right? I want to continue to focus on Gideon's relationship with God and the burdens he chose to carry. All right, so he did this. You saw his cynicism and fear at the beginning. God began to move and show, okay, I'm with you. He set that fleece, then God helped him defeat the Midianites with 300 men. But now we still have the rest of the story. And this story is about who are we going to trust? Some of the Midianites escaped. So Gideon asked the Ephraimites, who are, if you're having a hard time following, the Ephraimites are another Israelite tribe. All right, so they're cousins of Gideon, if you will. To destroy them. He asked the Ephraimites to destroy the Midianites as they came through the area. And the Ephraimites did. So here you have years of siege, a Midianite, a people group who were, what they would do is they'd come in every year, they'd destroy the Israelites' crops. So life was very difficult. Year after year. God, where are you? He raises up Gideon. Gideon destroys them. He leads an army of 300, destroys them. The Midianites are on the run. The Ephraimites catch a lot of them and kill them. Listen to this. This is Judges 8:1. Then the people of Ephraim asked Gideon, "Why have you treated us this way? Why didn't you send for us when we first went out to fight the Midianites?" And they argued heatedly with Gideon. Imagine going out, doing everybody in the area a favor, and the first people you come to, your cousins, are angry with you because you didn't invite them to the party. It was petty jealousy. But I don't know what would be going through your mind, but I would tell you I would be resentful. I would be angry. What's interesting is Gideon didn't do this. He didn't criticize them he was criticized for not including them, but he didn't give it back to them. Even though they tried to give him this burden of jealousy, and conflict with each other. He didn't take it too much. He said, "What have I accomplished compared to you? Aren't even your grapes, the leftover grapes of Ephraim's harvest, better than the entire crop of my little clan?" Meaning, look, you guys are still more important than us, don't worry. God gave you victory over Oreb and Zeb, that's the commanders of the Midianite army. And what have I accomplished compared to them? That's what he says. It really is a good answer. It's a great answer, I think, except he neglected to point them back to God. See, Gideon's burden, his responsibility, like all our responsibility, is to trust God. And do as God directed. He needed to tell them, and he really did, that, hey, your argument's not with me. Your argument is with God. Because God is the one that designed this plan that I have been obedient to. I don't know that I would have done anything different than Gideon, frankly. Try to appease. But it's a burden that begins to be added that isn't ours or Gideon's to have. I believe this passage was put in here for a reason. And it shows how we can get distracted, even with good intentions. Gideon did not do anything morally wrong, strategically wrong. At this point, what we see is he made life more complicated. Because he accepted a burden he really didn't need to carry. It is hard to criticize Gideon. After all, I know what I'd feel after I'd go through such an encounter. And what do you think you'd feel? Anger? Cynicism? Defeat? I just did this for you all, and this is the thanks I get? The passage begins to shows the beginning of a slippery slide for Gideon. Like a confusion of burdens, a confusion and complication of things. And actually a confusion of masters then. Because he moves on from these guys to Succoth, and I don't know how to pronounce that, more Israelites to try to get provisions for his little 300-man army. They're still chasing after who's ever left. And this is a response. Their response is, no, we're not going to feed you. Catch Zebah and Zalmunna first, and then we will feed your army. Think about that. More Israelite cousins who has just saved, and they're like, no, we're not sure you really, what if you don't defeat them and the Midianites come back? Then we're in trouble. And this is Gideon's response. I will return and tear your flesh with the thorns and briars from the wilderness. The question I have is, who or what is Gideon's master at this point? Gideon, in his anger, his vindictiveness, his disappointment and pain, we have all been there. We have all been there. Where we have expectations of our brothers and sisters or of the church, and it disappoints us. And it hits us here. And what do we do with that? All of a sudden, our walk with Christ gets complicated. It's very complicated. So we have Gideon at this point. I really want to defend him because he is only human and because I can identify with him. But that is why we need God. Because see, even our friends bump us off course, like I just said. And this is a point where we must turn to God and say, I trust you. I serve you. Very difficult. Remember when I said it's a task, we have to engage a task to trust God? Because the enemy does not use outside, he uses inside. He uses our spouses, our children, our friends, our churches, to try to dismantle this wonderful, strong relationship we have with God. And he tries to make it complicated. And God simply says, trust me. Trust me. Same thing happened again in the next town of Peniel. The same thing. Hey guys, we need food. No. So Gideon did capture the rest of the Midianites, including those kings. He brought them back to show those two villages. I caught these guys. And in his vindictiveness, he punished the leaders of the one village. And he killed all of the leaders in the other village in his anger. And then he killed the Midianites. We have to ask ourselves, whose battle was Gideon fighting at this point? Is this Gideon's battle, or is this God's battle? God did not ask him to come back to stick it to these two villages for neglecting him. He's making it more complicated instead of this simple faith. This simple trusting in God. Romans 6. Do not let sin control the way you live. Do not give in to sinful desires. Gideon's vindictiveness. Do not any part of your body become an instrument of evil to serve sin. Instead, give yourselves completely to God, for you were dead, but now you have new life. So use your whole body as an instrument to do what is right for the glory of God. Sin is no longer your master. For you no longer live under the requirements of the law. Instead, you live under the freedom of God's grace. Now, I hope you haven't put Gideon on too high of a pedestal around what he did, because he's just a man. Just like we are just men and women. And here at this point in his life, he's slipping. He's losing grip on something that he had. Just days earlier. We see in Gideon a man who has moved really through several burdens. He's being pulled through by different directions, right? Himself, his own human nature, and God. The story starts with this burden that he carries, this prison he has of cynicism and anger and fear. It's mastered really by fear. Eventually he yields to God. His burden is to trust God. That's what Jesus tells us to do. Trust me. To lead the charge of those 300 soldiers blowing their horns. And then he gets distracted. And reflect on your own life. Remember when you first met Jesus? And how wonderful it was? And how nothing else mattered, only that you could trust him? And then we get sophisticated? Or allow others to clutter our walk? We begin to think we're pretty smart, pretty good at being a Christian. And I've been a Christian for 40 years. So I know I'm really awesome at it. Really awesome at it. No one has ever told me that. I'm waiting. No one's ever going to tell me that. Because they see my humanity. And they see that it's me trusting God. And it's God working through me. It's not Keith. It's God working through me. And as long as I trust him and don't complicate things, God does amazing things. We allow our burdens to change, to be added, to get complicated. Gideon got hurt by the very people that should have loved him. He added the burden of pettiness, then disappointment, then vindictiveness. It seemed like this sinful nature is trying to edge itself back into the position, the number one position. And then we see the ultimate burden, success. See, the Israelites wanted Gideon to rule over them. So after all this drama with these villages, and then we're going to drop down to verse 23. 22 is actually when they say, hey, we need a king. You be our king because we can't get our act together. We need somebody to help us get our act together. And Gideon replies in verse 23, I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord will rule over you. Wow, this is really accurate. He's showing trust here. However, I do have one request, that each of you give me an earring from the plunder you collected from your fallen enemies. Gideon was right to deny the kingship, but he still allowed himself to be taken in by success. So Gideon, verse 27, made a sacred ephod from the gold and put it in Ophrah, his hometown. And here's the thing, right here. But soon all the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping it, and it became a trap for Gideon and his family. Now the Israelites did have 40 years of peace. But when Gideon, what he did is he married a bunch of women. He had a bunch of women, a bunch of kids. He had a concubine, he had a son, and when Gideon died, they ended up killing everybody in his family. There really wasn't lasting prosperity. Because of this trap of success. And what this symbol, the ephod, it might even have good intentions, folks. But it brought the Israelites down. And it was, as the Bible says, it was a trap for his family. It was a trap for Gideon and his family. Note how the Israelites did this to themselves. Note how Gideon's pain and distraction came from within. Not from the Midianites, it came from within. When we focus on ourselves, we take on efforts that usually lead to nowhere. We create a distance between ourselves and God, and we create a distance between each other. We make things complicated when we don't simply trust God. Matthew 11:20 and then 28 through 30. Then Jesus began to denounce the towns where he had done so many of his miracles because they hadn't repented of their sins and turned to God. See, the issue is that they had actually seen him do these miracles. They saw him do these miracles and they didn't repent. In verse 28, and Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. Often do you say or hear people say, if only God would prove himself, I would believe. But as Jesus said, even with the miracles, the supernatural acts, people would not turn to God. Who are we going to trust? We're going to trust Jesus. I'm going to trust Jesus. I am going to trust Jesus. Jesus says, trust me, carry my yoke. My burden is light. The burden I give you is light. It's simple. Love your God, love each other. Simple. Give up yourself. Don't look for ways to protect yourself, because that is the wrong burden. It's the wrong burden, trying to protect yourself. He says, pour yourself out, like I poured myself out. Don't complicate it. God will accomplish his purposes through us, even his purpose of joy that we have when we follow him. It's just that simple. I wanted to use the story of Gideon, and I kind of used the rest of the story. We kind of know, a lot of us know a lot of the story. It's the rest of the story I think is very important. Because what happens to these strong walks with the Lord? Where do we get off course? Or where can we make our walk even stronger? And it is really in the simplifying of saying, God, I trust you. I trust you. Just that simple. Even when we get attacked. Or even when we attack others. I attack others. But Jesus said, trust me. Trust me. I don't have it here, but I'm just thinking of, I took it off my message, but 1 John, when he just says, you know what? Your burden is to love God and to love each other. Just as plain and simple as that. So I want to encourage you. If someone has disappointed you, because people have disappointed you, give it to God. Give it to God. Look to him. Trust him. He will solve it. His kingdom keeps moving forward. It's no more complicated than that. Let's stand.